Okay, thanks everyone for coming. This is the ADP meeting for January 17th. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Squamish Nation traditional territory. The motion to adopt the agenda. Seconded John. Carried Graham, thanks. Appointment of the chair and deputy chair. So we're looking for someone to hold this position, these two positions for 1 year. Do we have any volunteers? I'd like to relinquish the chair, so just time for change.
Oh, okay.
So does anyone want to volunteer for this?
Throw it out there.
Okay, John?
Not sure if a member at large can share, but, or deputies.
I don't know if there's any.
I don't think there's a restriction to preclude it.
No.
Yeah. Okay. There's one nomination. Okay. Shall we?
Second, John?
Second, John. Okay. All in favor for John as chair?
These guys.
Carried. All right.
That was a little too easy.
Hope you're ready for
There'd
today.
be someone else in some discussion.
And the appointment of deputy chair. Would someone like to be deputy chair for a year?
I think I was co-chair last year, deputy chair, so I'm happy to relinquish that and switch it up.
Okay. Volunteers, it's an easy job. John's not here, you kind of fill in. All right, David. Second, David. Graham. All in favor of David for deputy chair? Carried. All right.
It is too easy.
Don't be off.
Yeah. Okay.
Have you got your closing speech?
No.
Party?
Party, yes. Okay, thanks guys for volunteering, that's great.
Thank you for the last couple of years now.
For sure, yeah. Okay, so minutes is the next. Have we reviewed those and have any comments that we had?
I have a few edits.
A few edits, okay,
Comments,
good.
yeah.
Yeah,
On page 6, 1, 2, 3, fourth bullet from the bottom, should be clarified public amenity space, not event space. And on the next page 7, with the 9th bullet down, it says blurred lines, it should be blurred lines. So blurred lines between land use designation, strike, agree with commercial separation, I don't think I said that, and then just keep more mixed use in the village. And then just 2 bullets down from that, it should be greater public amenities considered, not just public amenities.
greater
Yeah.
public amenities. Okay. Anyone else with changes?
No, I saw the blurred lines too.
All right.
I don't know if it needs to be noted that I recused myself from that one as I was part of the design team. So
Okay.
I
Yeah.
didn't see it noted anywhere.
Okay. Okay, with those changes, motion to adopt the minutes. Carlos, seconded John,
Sorry, who motions?
Carlos.
Okay.
Carried. First business item is development permit number 445, Sitka Lane. To present from the district to start is Carrie Hamilton.
Hi everyone, new and old, my name is Carrie Hamilton. I'm a planner at the District of Squamish, and I'm also the planner on this file for DP 445. It's a development permit application for a 5-unit passive house development located at 38459 Buckley Avenue. And the proposed development is located in development permit area 7, which is within the old OCP. This application was came in, I believe, in 2016, so it's part of the old OCP and old development permit guidelines. It The project was previously named Sitka Lane and has come to ADP before. It came on April 20th of 2017. It was supported by this committee and then went to council and was not approved and was sent back for staff referral to be reviewed due to the variances. So it has now come back, and the applicant has gotten support from the adjacent property, which is called Arbutus Grove, and they'll be sharing the existing laneway of Arbutus Grove now, and they'll be consolidating the two lots. So these will kind of come together. So kind of keep that in mind with your design review. So staff are generally supportive of the revised application and are seeking ADP specific recommendations on a few things, and I've listed them out on the 5th page of your report. So one of them is the fronting public street. We have a guideline in DPA 7 that states that multi-unit residential buildings and their component units should be oriented to the fronting public street as much as possible, and staff are just seeking ADP suggestions to ensure that the street facing design of both the building and the landscaping meet this intention. There's also the west and the north facades. DPA 7 states that the facades of the multi-unit residential building must be articulated to avoid a large monolithic appearance, and staff is seeking ADP's recommendations to break up the large monolithic west and north facades to meet the intention of this guideline. And then there's materials and ground floor treatment. So DPA 7 states that building materials should be indigenous to Squamish and should convey feelings of quality and permanence. And we just want to get some comments just around the finished concrete that wraps the ground floor, or most of the ground floor, and if that's a supportable material for most of that, as well as there is some missing information just around the roof deck materials and where the soffit locations are. So if you guys have any suggestions around that to add in, that would be great. The fourth one is usable open space. A variance is being requested to allow for the public open space to be in the front setback. They meet the requirement for open space, the amount of it, but they're requiring it to also be calculated within the front setback. And with that, staff are looking to see a little bit more activation of the natural play area and that front area for open space. So we'd love some comments from this committee around that. And the final one is the drive aisle. You can see in this report, I've put an image in here about this extra space, and it's kind of either a drive aisle or is it should be landscaped if it's not. So we want to get some suggestions on how this should be designed, as it doesn't, as it's designed right now, doesn't comply with our zoning bylaws. Okay. That's it from us. There are 4 variances on this application. One was the open space in the front setback, which I already spoke to, and 3 others are slight variances to the building height, the front setback, and the rear setback for the passive house standards, so due to the thicker walls and thicker ceilings that are required, which are all staff supportable. And I'll leave it to that.
Thank you very much, everybody, for coming out, especially with this being the only application. See so many of you guys here. It's really awesome. We have what we believe is a little bit of a unique and special project here, just because of the ability of making the most of putting these 2 lots together. Arbutus Grove has been around for a couple of years, and they've had issues with their garbage and recycling, and also with that long driveway that works on plan, but in reality it's not a comfortable or a good space for people to use. It needs to be open all the time because people can't drive in and out there. It's not a great place to turn around on the other side. And so what actually ended up happening is that after the previous time this project came by, the developer came to us with a discussion about what if we put these 2 lots together and we can see if we can make the most of both of them. We can add a garbage and recycling room that can serve both the buildings, and we can potentially remove another driveway that connects to the road, make more of the interaction between the road and these buildings. And you realize that going through the design phase, that the scale of the project really lends itself to these common amenities that starting to serve each other. So instead of having a driveway that just served one side, now at least it's serving most of the other side as well. It allowed for the new project, which we call either Sitka Lane or Arbutus 2, to have better garage space, better community space. The open spaces became bigger. There was some efficiencies that happened between the parking. For instance, we still qualify for one accessible parking stall, and there's much better use of the guest parking now as well. It's more spread out. Instead of the ends of Arbutus now, it's spread out to the middle of the lot as well. We are able to have found some very big efficiencies that happen with some play areas that can form in the front and the back of these lots, while still giving these guys some private yard space in the back. The type of people that's living there at the moment with little kids and toddlers and kids that are starting to grow older allows us to have a real kids toddler play area in the back, whether it could be a sand pit or something similar where the parents can sit with them, and a place in the front where kids can kick a ball around. And so they don't have to be in this driveway or in the street. And when they are in the street, there's a little bit more space for them without having to feel like they're in this 6-meter wide corridor that runs up and down. I'm going to push away past the kids on the screen. Maybe. That's actually excellent. Okay, so excellent. Thank you. This is a passive house project. So what this means basically is that we're going to have a 90% reduction in the electricity use of these units compared to what a BC building code building was up until December 10th of last year. So, and these are very accurate numbers. This has been tested for quite a few years, and they have looked at what is happening in practice and how these things turn out, and the numbers are true. The implications of this is basically that we end up with significantly bigger walls, floor system, and a roof system to allow for significantly more insulation to go in. And then there's other refined things like this, HRV and airtightness and all the other basic things that go in. So the massing itself does lean itself towards more of a bulky design. We go from a 2x6 construction. On the outside of that we put another 12-inch TGI. So you can see we go from 5.5 inches to 17-inch walls. And that does have an implication of how the building looks and functions. We do our best to work backwards and not making it look like a big block, but understanding that State Code Level 5 is the direction that things are going to go with. This is our second passive house project in the neighborhood, in Squamish, and so we are starting to get a real good feel for what our limitations are and where to find the efficiencies, because at the end of the day, our developer still competes with the BC building code products that is being sold at the same time. One of the implications of this is basically that a typical townhouse will have an entry right at grade, and you go inside and there's a little mudroom, and then you go upstairs. This creates for very awkward details to form with insulation in a floodplain area. So our solution to this is basically to create a common stairway or common stairways between units to go up, and then the whole building is sitting on top of your parquet. So we remove the whole building basically out of the floodplain area, and it allows us to have a nice big 18-inch TGI joist for lots and lots and lots of insulation to go into that floor package. So in this specific drawing, you guys can start to get a feel for basically what happens with the parquet, the building sitting on top of it. We still have a mechanical room that's in the floodplain, and that is in a concrete structure with a submarine door. So that is, although it's in the floodplain, it is totally enclosed away from the flood, and we have the support from the geotechnical engineer on that, which we received last night. And so, yeah, that's basically the bulk of it. I'll go through the rest of it. I'll touch now with you guys on what is passive house. I think most people here have probably heard about it, or read up on it, and experienced it in some way. At present, area calculations in Squamish are done as 165 millimeters from the outside of the wall going inwards. most other municipalities work at 165 millimeters from your drywall out, which means that in Squamish, we actually have a significant amount of area, GFA, that's sitting in our exterior wall because our walls are so thick. I'm going to quickly touch base with you guys on the variances. So on the street side, that little red corner that you guys see there is our variance requirement for the front setback for the building, which is basically all insulation. And yes, it is possible for us to cut off that corner, but it will just create an awkward looking, funny, expensive corner with no benefit to anybody. On the back side of the lot, we have the 2x6, or the structure, is sitting inside the setback, and our insulation, our additional insulation, is sitting outside, and that's what the variance is for there. Here's a comparison for you guys between a 2x6 on the left-hand side, the passive house standard floor assembly in the middle, which is basically an 18-inch joist, or in exceptional circumstances you can do a 16-inch joist, compared to where a BC building code will be 9.5 or 11 and 7/8 inches. So you guys can see that there's a very big difference there. The last image there is a plastic house roof. So you've got your 18-inch TGI joist, and on top of that, we have a 2x10 that is causing the overframing because this is vapor open to the outside, which means that we have 18 inches, another 9.5 inches, so what is that, 27.5 inches thick roof assembly, compared to a typical BC building code, which is again 9.5 or 11 and 7/8. And that's why we are asking for a variance of 10 centimeters or something like that, 4 inches or something like that. So it's very small. All our floor to ceiling heights are 8 feet. There's no oversize. This is basically the minimum that we can do, and this is where we end up, just so that you guys understand of why we're asking for this. We did a comparison. This isn't 100% accurate, but it's very close to the lots separately, Arbutus Grove and then Sitka Lane, and the two together, and what works better and what doesn't work better. And all in all, it seems like it's a really good one for both projects to work together and create some services for both. I'm sure you guys have seen this and looked at this. From a building code point of view, it's exactly the same as the existing 4-story townhouse that is on the site, although most of our living space, all of our living space only starts on the 2nd story. Here's a layout where you guys can see that the general parking that is forming, the extra guest parking that's forming pretty much in the middle of the lots, so that will be helpful.
I think you have to use the mouse anyways,
Yeah.
for,
Yes. I'll use the mouth and it shows up on both
yeah,
sides.
yeah.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Our viewers at home.
Yes. So this is the general parking. This is what we see as the toddler play area, because it's really enclosed and it's a safe place where they can go and do their toddler thing. The space in the front here is a better space for kicking a ball around, and it's a little bit more open. You guys can see that what an impact it makes not to have another drive-by like this on the other side here. It makes an enormous difference in how these work. On this side here, we have the recycling area, and right behind it the mechanical room, and those are both in the floodplain area. After we received the comments from Kerry about activating this and making this a little bit more interesting from the road side, we did have the thought of adding a sail type cover to this area that is very light. It's got a little bit of an organic shape to it. How exactly that is going to work, we will have to speak to some manufacturers and see, but the idea is to cover a very big part of this that will provide some shade to it, and will create some water protection so that people can use that deck more often. Here you guys can see there's a main staircase going up here, then there's two other staircases that go up between these two units and these two units. The 5th unit at the end will have a general staircase, and all of these are connected at the top. I'll show you guys in a moment. Here is the shared recycling and garbage area, and a mechanical room that will basically serve the whole building. Guest parking spaces over here. The other accessible parking lot, that parking space that would have been part of the house now, is basically taken care of by the one that is existing at our previous program. Individual private backyard space here that is accessible through the garage of each unit. Just the basic area and the layouts that you guys can see. Garage, then you have living, dining, kitchen on top, bedroom areas, and then the rooftop deck, which I haven't really spoken about a lot. On this floor, on the rooftop deck area, it creates, I think, close to 1,000 square feet of people to have private outside space that will be very sunny. Morning sun on the north side, good afternoon sun on the south side. And in this case here, we are actually able to create a very small bump out in the building without compromising the passive side of this, just because there's no concrete like we have in the garage space. So that's what makes it difficult to do it on the ground floor. From an elevation point of view, you guys can see that our building definitely looks a little bit more bulky than what the neighbors does. This isn't modeled in the same amount of detail, but you guys can see that our building is the same height, very, very close, but definitely a little bit wider. And the extra width comes basically from us not having to have our own driveway. So we give them garbage and recycling and extra guest parking and all those things, and they give us some shared driveway space. So this just shows you guys some more massing. The staircases do become quite complicated because they're stacked on top of each other, and you still have the one that moves up between the garages. Yeah. From an elevation point of view, the idea is to use exactly the same finishes that is what is on our Builders Grove at the moment. The same shingles, the same colors. We have samples here of everything that we can show you guys. And we have a few options that we wanted to discuss with you guys for the ground. From a floodplain point of view, it's really great to use the concrete. There can be a flood, and tomorrow everybody goes on with their lives. There's just no damage. The other option that is used, for instance, at the moment at our Builders Grove, which is normal stick framing, drywall siding on the outside, and it's reasonable, it's acceptable, but it's not a great solution. So the option that we wanted to mention to you guys is CLTs. This is basically an option that can replace the bulk of the concrete there. We will keep the concrete around the recycling room and the mechanical room just because they have a tendency to wear and they have a tendency to get bumped and things like that. But around the garages, there's an option for us to use this. It is environmentally friendly, it is very durable, it is less expensive than concrete, and we only have to cover the outside of this just because this look is a little rough for some people. But from the inside, electrical is run like in a commercial application, just BX conduit that is enclosed in and no one cares because it's in the inside of the garage. But we don't have all that concrete and all the CO2 that goes with it. So this is something that is not in our drawing, but we would like to get you guys' feedback on it. Yeah, it's a little bulky and heavy, sorry. Don't hurt yourself with that. So it's basically just 2x4s that go in both ways, and it forms a slab and very big walls, and we see this as a great application for this instead of using the concrete. From the elevations point of view, the units will all have a nice big deck on the main floor outside of the living rooms that is south-facing and covered. So if you have a barbecue or something like that, there's space for that. With very big windows. The bedrooms is set above that. The whole private area in your house is set above that. And then obviously the rooftop decks at the top. Here the massing shows a little bit more what the potential look can be of the sail. It's hard for us to model. It's not an easy thing to show, but we do think that it will, or it could have a very big impact on how this elevation presents itself. Considering that we don't have a driveway on this side, it could add a lot of three-dimensional steps into this so that it's not a big blank face, which the mechanical and garbage area already kind of moves the building back a little bit. So there is some movement in that elevation already. From the back of the property, you can see the walkway that forms all the way along. As you go up the stairs, there's a general connected walkway that basically allows all the units to be connected. So when you go up the stairs, you can go left or right. You can use any of the stairs to get to any of the units until you go inside the front door of the unit itself. Materials basically we're matching what is at our Beauty's Grove at the moment, so there's no surprises there. And we understand that the character of the building is different, but we want to show that this is part of the same family, basically in the same neighborhood. But the 4 years in difference, or 3 years in difference in there, when they were created, will be reflected in how they look. Kind of a perspective of where you will come in and you can see the difference between the two buildings. This will basically be the man door going into our garbage and recycling, and then there's a garage door for easy access for the garbage truck to move away. At present, there's totes that's being used. People store it in the garages and then they have to bring it out, and then the garbage truck backs up down the road, and supposedly it's not an ideal situation. So this will be a very big upgrade for both of them. You guys can get a feel for what is happening with the sales there. Big open yard in the front here. Yeah, and that's pretty much where we are. Landscaping. So this is our sun study that we've done, so that you guys can have an understanding of what happens during the different phases. This do not have any adverse effect on the neighbors than what any other townhouse project would have had. Understanding that most of the winter, this is dark anyway. There's not any effect outside with great sunlight. And in the summer and spring and fall areas, there's very little shade that's going over to the neighbors, or unreasonable shade. Yeah. And then landscaping. How do you? Seem to have lost the landscaping file.
Can I do a small public service announcement while you guys figure it out? Just because I know we have a lot of new members. If you live in Arbutus Grove or right adjacent to the property, it's probably a conflict of interest. So once we go into a question and comment period, I think it'd be best if there are any, if anybody here lives in this or adjacent to step away from it.
We have no financial gain out of it. So why would it be a conflict of interest?
So you would be an affected person essentially.
Okay, but we still have no financial gain out of it.
No, conflict of interest is not just financial.
It's pretty typical to step away from the table
Yeah.
if you're affected by the project.
Tom, landscaping?
Derek was right in saying it's a bit of an unusual project to suddenly approach, and we worked on our Arbutus Grove and it was fairly successful. And then when I'm looking at this, there's not a lot of, or purposely not a lot of landscape per se. And the first, where's this house?
It's right above the left corner.
Right, there. Is each unit has substantial, but a good back area. So our first decision was to leave that basically as lawn. I didn't want to take up room with a major hedge across the back. I wanted some sort of perimeter planting and the opportunity that people who live there over time, they could take care of that space themselves or enhance it or work with it. The second part, well, was the streetscape and the trees and such. We had deciduous trees, added some conifers. I wanted to be cautious about conifers in a small area and the huge size that it can become. So these are a yellow cedar that have a more narrow character and slower growing. And I felt that lawn area was a good idea. It was a simple kind of open space that most projects of this nature don't have. And then sort of the third one, it was a little more interesting, or a bit of a conundrum, was this kind of space there that was labeled play structure. And thinking about it, I thought, well, there's play structures, and then we determined, or that's when I thought, that this would be toddler oriented. If it's older kids, 5 and above, 6, 8, 10, they're probably not going to hang around there, and they'll go across the street to where all the schools are. Well, so then you're into a toddler sort of adventure play or natural play, and that has a lot of connotations to what it could be. Like the owner had sort of visions of major log crawling, and almost acrobatic in a sense. But I looked at projects we've done before. This one here is across the street at Stan Clark Park, and it's quite successful. You can't see the picture very well, but it has a vine maple and a shade and logs and little pathways through it. It's 5R, but it's the kids sort of use it as a. And this is in the athlete village of Chetham's Crossing. And it's just logs and sand, and well, there's a little water pump there that we're not in here. And it has a berm around it and a sitting area. And it's quite successful, because you can see here, there's big gangs of kids that I think there's no daycare or something like that, but it's always kind of popular. So my feeling is that this would equally be successful. So more softer landscape here. This is a climbing berm, much like you sort of see in the background there. It's a meter high, so it's a lawn area that they can roll and tumble. That's a sand area, and it's got these same sort of logs embedded in round boulders that you see kids walking across this. So there's a little bit of skill building into it. There's climbing on the rocks, there's playing on the grass, there's building in the sand, and they can bring little plays, toys, equipment, and mothers can hang out there. They have somewhere, I guess, sort of safe to go with the kids. And then the front of this is lawn, because I want visibility through there. And these are kind of shade trees that, and a picnic area, because they will hang out. So that's the gist of it. It's a fairly simple, straightforward landscape. We'll see next. This is the kind of planting or plant materials, this grasses and perennials. This plant here, the Amalanche, Princess Diane, is what will be in the play area. So it's a mid-sized tree that's not going to overtake the area. It's going to provide shade, but not too much shade. And I guess this sort of describes how the lineal planting will be, and this is the textures, and there's this conifer mix and deciduous mix. So I think that's the character this project will take on, which is much the same as our views grove across from it. And I guess to sum up from what Derek's saying, the way the two projects interact, and then this, well, suddenly with this nice gain of lawn space, play space, seems to make that a little over two projects into a bit more of a community, I suppose. That has sort of its own pleasant life. Thanks.
Okay, thanks very much. We'll just do a round of questions and then go on to comments. It was a great presentation. Does anyone want to start with questions? Okay, I'll start.
Richard,
Yes.
I just want to say that I recuse myself from comments.
Okay.
Even though I represent the Public Art Committee, I live at Upper East Road.
Okay. Typically we come away from the table and sit in the back.
Sure.
Thank you. Okay, thank you again. I love the option here of sharing the drive aisle, that's fantastic. You get so much more usable backyard space for those units. So there's so many benefits here, not very many disadvantages. Can you explain, like, one of the things you guys are providing is garbage. I can't see how that's different in that everyone at Arbutus Grove and this new site will have their own recycle bins inside their garage, and then they'll pull it out and put it in your bin, or how does that work?
No, basically their use of totes will be obsolete.
Okay.
They'll basically, instead of taking their bags into their totes, they'll just take their garbage bags into the garbage and recycling with big bins into it.
Okay. Okay. All right. So, all right. Fair enough. And the setbacks. It looks like the backyard setbacks of each is a lot more than what Arbutus Grove has. Is there, like?
Yeah, so basically, the side setback that we would have had between us and Arbutus Grove doesn't exist anymore. So
Yes.
so we have a side setback on the back of our units. We have a backyard setback in the back of the units furthest away from the street, and then we have our front setback. So the setbacks definitely did change a little bit because of it. Our building is still within our where the setback would have been if the two properties didn't were not amalgamated. So we don't go over that previous with the setback.
Okay. All right. Just looks like the side yard where the people have their backyards looks like a bigger setback than the Arbutus Grove backyards.
Yeah, because we don't have a street, we can fill up
Yeah.
the whole setback area.
Yeah.
If there was a street, then obviously that would have taken up more space than what was. Typical street is 6 meters. Our backyard, our side yard here, I think, is three something meters. Yeah, so we just gain that space now.
Okay. And there's complete perimeter fencing around the natural play area? Is that?
The one in the back?
Yeah.
Yes.
Particularly between the last unit A and the natural play area, is that straight down right to the backyard fence, the side yard
Yeah.
fence? Okay.
What we found is in Arbutus Grove is that there was a requirement for them to not take it all the way to the property line so that people can walk through there. And at the very first strata meeting, everybody was like, we need to enclose that. So that's just the way that people wanted to use it. What we see as a midway solution is maybe to have a gate through there, so that if there is a general landscaping contractor or anything like that, that they can still get in there.
Yeah.
We don't think that the fact that that is enclosed on three sides is negative, just because it gives a certain level of safety for tiny people to run around and crawl around and not disappear.
Right. Perfect. Is there going to be a sign like Sitka? What is it called? Sitka Place? I know there's one at Arbutus Grove. So do you know? Is there a sign that says?
No, the whole development will be called Arbutus Grove.
Oh, okay.
We are trying to create some identity through just potentially the doors. Or people will just come in and say, we're on the left-hand side, we're on the right.
Okay.
But the numbers are, there's not that many units at the end of the day. So.
Right. Okay. That's my questions. Thanks. Jenna?
Sure. Sounds good. In terms of passive house requirements, are there any requirements with regards to tree planting with shading or non-shading? Just trying to get my sense of.
Yeah, very good question. Shading plays such a big role in this that even how deep the window is set into the wall, that shading and the effect that it has on the amount of sun that goes into is taken into account. So in this specific scenario, the only trees that we're worried about that's going to change over time is the ones that is next to this street. But we are not really too worried about this because at the same time we know that temperatures are actually going up significantly. So in the bigger picture of passive house, overheating or with any stick-coat level building, overheating is a significantly bigger issue than heating. So more shade won't necessarily be a negative thing in the long run.
Okay. If you could speak to the driveway, the kind of extra space that's between where they're parking and where the shared driveway is, there's kind of that linear space that.
This one right there?
Yeah, exactly, and just the rationale for that space.
There's two reasons for that. The first one is that we felt that if we moved the building into that area, we would have made the existing very narrow corridor feel there worse.
Mm-hmm.
We wanted to make it better. And the second one is that our buildings need a minimum amount of space between them to allow for the unprotected openings. And at the moment, we are right at that zone. So we can't actually bring the building closer. So that's why I said we are actually sitting in the original setbacks.
Right.
And the reason for that is that we wanted to make that corridor space better if we want to give it away.
Okay, thanks for that. The west and east elevations, planning has sort of mentioned, is there more opportunity to give it more articulation? Can you speak to, are there any design limitations as to why they're quite simple?
Yeah, the garbage and recycling room is oversized to accommodate the Arbutus Grove site.
Yeah.
So from 5 units now, we are now accommodating 16 in total. And so we think that step and deck area that is created on the street side with the sail over it basically addresses that concern on that side.
Okay.
At the same time, the cost effect of that kind of limits us in what we can do on the other side. So if there was any part of this that we had to compromise, we felt that this would have been it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then just one last question with regards, you mentioned a potential alternative with the big wood sample being used on the parking area, but then you mentioned that it would be cladded. What would that be?
It most likely a wood cladding.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it look wood-like, it's
Yes.
just that you're covering
Yeah.
that. Okay.
We really don't mind the look of the concrete. We think it creates a very good space feel for the building to sit on. At the same time, when we add so much wood, we want to emphasize that. So.
Definitely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi. So yeah, the setback was a question I had as well. Did you have any thought about maybe creating some sort of apron in front of the garage, or a bit more, like try to celebrate those entries a little bit more with a different type of paving or little planting nodes in front?
No, the idea of having a different finish. I was going to see if there's someone that I can show this a little bit better. So basically, you're talking about here in front of the staircases.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Okay, fair enough.
It's not a bad idea. No, we didn't actually.
Well, in part, you don't want to suddenly change paving materials for no differential settlement and stuff in a small area like that. And the pavers will get dirty and oily, just to even end up worse than asphalt. I think in that situation.
Right. So, I mean, there could be an opportunity to change that to like a concrete with a rollover, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, I don't know, just to sort of delineate that this is more of a pedestrian area, right?
Yeah.
Instead of just
Yeah.
asphalt all the way up to the garage.
Yeah.
And then this might be a passive house design technique, but the pass-through stairs, so you come in and under and then up to the back decks to come in? Okay.
That back walkway, so basically, that space right there is all connected, and that's where your staircase come up, right there between the units. That's right there between the units,
Okay.
and right there between the units is where those staircases come up. Yeah.
Okay, and then anybody can come up on those back decks and go, okay.
So the units are not directly connected to the garages. If you want to get into your garage, you have to go outside, and when you come down the stairs, there's a man door for you to go in.
Is that like a passive house move then? Because it feels really...
Yes, it is. It is a price that people pay.
Okay.
The other side of it is just to give you an idea how we had to convince our developer of this is that the normal townhouse entry is about 150 square feet of mostly stair.
Right,
We take that area and we put it into the unit.
right.
So the rest of the unit, what people get for that area feels more spacious and all those things. But there's a price to be paid for that.
Yeah. I think design-wise, it's hard, like if I didn't live here, or had never been here before, where's the front door to find my friend?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
So we see that our ability to put the numbers right here where you come in, that will make it very clear so that people say, hey, that's number 7, so I probably have to go up there. And it's not, it's from that moving forward, it should be fairly straightforward.
Okay. And then did you think about separating that back deck area just for safety or privacy?
Code-wise, we are not allowed.
You can't. And any thought on the upper deck? I don't even know what to call it, vestibule.
Yeah.
Any different design ideas around that to try to make this scale?
Yes. The problem is that we have used everything but about 75 square feet of our area. And we have to get our mechanical in there and our staircase, and that's why it's tight, because there's no more space. We really had the idea of putting a nice sunroom in there, or a place where people can have a covered area. But then we said, well, they have a covered area downstairs by the living room, so we don't need to duplicate that. That's it. And then the compactness of it for the two to be back to back and have the smallest amount of envelope around it is what helps us make this work. So to put in perspective for you guys, the maximum allowable kilowatt hours per square meter per year that we're allowed for passive house is 15, and we're about 13.5, which is a healthy number, but that 1.5 kilowatt hours that we have left over is, you use it up in like a heartbeat. So.
Okay. That's it, thanks.
Okay.
Is the strata combined or a shared agreement?
It will be a combined strata. It will be one strata. Yeah.
Okay. The mechanical deck, is that common space?
Yes.
And I guess in that same question, or same area, you said you couldn't divide, say, between the pairs of units so that at least it wasn't. Why? Which is your second meaning?
I saw your frown there.
Yeah.
I knew this was coming. When your front entry to your unit is more than that 1.5 meters above grade, the code doesn't know what to do with it. And so because the code said this is what a townhouse project looks like, and that conforms to this, and this is what our apartment building looks to that, and they have their things, and we are now doing something that is right in the middle of these two things, and so we have to create an equivalency for that. But in the process, do not have a standpipe at each one of these stairs and making them formal exits and having pool stations at all of them. The whole thing gets really upside down.
Okay. So it kind of leads to my next question. How do you get to the backyard from the living spaces?
You go downstairs and go through your garage.
Yeah, okay. So that might be a way.
Yeah, or the other one is that when we said we wanted to put a gate into every unit so that you can walk around the back there, that would be the second option.
Yeah.
And we think from a fire perspective, when someone is outside there and there's a fire in your garage, you will have to have a little gate to be able to walk out in a controlled manner.
Okay, good. Your required guest spaces would be 2 anyways, right?
Yes.
5 times a quarter is 1 1/4,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
So you're not providing extra guest space. I think you said that. We're providing extra guest spaces for the other strata.
Yeah, the quarters and the 3/4 and all of those things work out to nice.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough.
We had 2 extra parking spaces, but we felt that the 4 variances that we're asking for is enough, and so we got.
So in that same vein, turnaround, and I just drove in there today to kind of, I hadn't been in there since we saw that previous project here. And there's cars parked in the guest parking spots and you can't turn around.
Yeah.
So both your spots are guest parking spots, so there's really no turnaround space.
No,
Is that
so
right?
this extra 3 meters here is going to make between the property line.
Oh, okay, so you can just pull a turnaround
It's going to
anywhere.
make the turnaround significantly easier.
And have you done the maneuvers on those?
No.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Yeah. But if you go from 6 meters, which allows you technically for a 3-point turn, and you go to 9 meters,
Yeah, it's pretty reasonable.
which you would think it would be better.
Okay. So, but the garbage truck will have to nose in from the street and then back out on the street, right?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
and that's why the garbage was put on this side, so that they can do it in a very short period, where before, they had to reverse all the way to the last unit, pick up that last load, stop swearing, and then go back to the last.
Good. No, I think that makes good sense. So the building is obviously very passive. I'm not seeing that same kind of love in the landscape. What are the kind of energy saving and environmental moves and green moves on the site that the building is making? What are you doing to reduce energy costs, improve the environment, stormwater management, roof drainage, all those kind of things on the site? I don't see the site being consistent with the building. And its approach.
Well, the storm drainage is an extension, if I understand it correctly, of what was determined and figured it out for Beavis Road.
Yeah. Okay. So because we're able to share the roadway, we don't have to build any extra storm systems. So our civil works have already confirmed that we can just tie into the existing storm system. So there'll be no more manholes, no more pipe going in the ground, no additional infrastructure is required for this project to combine with the neighboring project.
Okay, good. I think that was it for my question.
I guess one of my first questions was, you had mentioned that the driveway was an issue at Arbutus Grove originally for turning around, and I think you just said you're adding 3 meters to it now. Is that enough to be able to make it so that people are going to be able to, like?
It's going to make it a lot easier than what it is at the moment.
Right.
To actually create a hammerhead or something like that takes so much space that it just won't be a viable option. Or it's so cool.
And then you had mentioned that this is the second passive house project you've worked on in Squamish?
Yes.
Did the other one achieve certification?
It is, the second floor framing is halfway done at the moment.
Okay.
To give you guys a very good update that happened there is that we were able to do site drainage. So we threw the asphalt out. Maybe I shouldn't say this in front of planning. We are planning to remove the asphalt and put paving in so that the water can just drain on site, and the geotech confirmed this and everybody's happy with it. And as soon as planning approves that, then we
Can do that.
So yeah.
So my question was, I guess the other project's not completed yet, so you haven't achieved certification.
Yeah.
But you have a consultant or a designer and a certifier already signed on for this?
We are the consultant and designer and the certifier RDH.
RDH, right.
Actually, not for this project. Once you guys tell us that you like it, then we will get a certifier involved. But we know what we're doing.
So you've put the PHPP together yourself?
Completely, yeah.
Right. And it's looking like you can achieve certification?
Absolutely, yes.
And so the added cost of the components, the windows and doors and everything else, the developer's totally okay with that and it makes sense?
Yes.
So that's been considered?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, and then so the north facade, I guess one of the things that we're supposed to be thinking about is the west and north facade and how to make it look less monolithic. What about tying in some wood accents, like maybe some panels between the windows or below the windows, or just some sort of way of breaking up that wall a bit?
Absolutely, yeah. It's so, do you want to say something?
It's a comment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Are,
We have questions.
Sorry, are you able to? Are you?
Is there
I'll pose it as a
design reason that
Are you
we can't
able to?
have?
Is there a design reason, or is there something limiting the fact that you were able to put a wood panel on that wall to make it look less monolithic?
No.
Is that a question?
That's a good question.
Is there something stopping you from being able to do that?
No.
No. Is that something you're considering doing?
Now I am.
Cool. Sorry, I didn't realize it wasn't a question. The roof structure on top of the sun deck at the very top, does that connect all the way across?
Yes.
So is it covered space between the vestibules that come
Yes.
up? It is.
Yeah, so there's no, there's just staircases that come up internally.
Right.
And so that's just part of a covered little space between the two units. So two units are back to back, and so that situation actually occurs there and there.
Sorry, hold on, let me put my glasses on. Yeah, sorry, something
So there, that covered area occurs, and
Right.
there.
Yeah.
And here you have a little bit of an overhang, and there you will have a little bit of an overhang. And that is just in the overframing, that's in the 2x10 part that goes over the PGI joist that is on the inside, that is, yeah.
Right. Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Is there any thought put to including a provision for this building to be net zero, just with the addition of conduit or something to allow for solar panels?
The developer actually expressed some interest in adding solar panels or anything like that, which we are very interested in doing, but at the same time, we want to take one step at a time. When we get you guys' support for this, then it's worth it for us to look at taking this even further. But whether it is with, like we did at the other project where we were able to change the site drainage, which was a very, very big enhancement for us. The addition of solar panels is a very small step to take this to a net zero. I mean, we'll have to come back and see planning about this, but from an actual cost or running perspective, it's very straightforward, very easy to do.
Right, so you would have to come back because it would require another height variance.
Form and character, yeah. I don't know what mechanical stuff on the roof is. It's not technical. I haven't looked at that. They'll want us to come back.
Yeah, well, it'd be great. It'd be great if you could be pre-approved for something like that, but that's a comment, and I'll stop there. Is there an agreement? So I imagine it was quite difficult to get the strata to approve the changes, including a shared roadway and a garbage room, etc. Are there any agreements between the developer and the strata that we need to be aware of that are kind of a critical component to this process being approved by us and moving forward?
My understanding is that this works so well for the existing situation with garbage storage and parking and the driveway and not being able to makes this a very good project for both parties. Everybody wins in this. So it's very positive. But Tyler can comment on that. He's living in our British Grove, so he's got a conflict of interest.
Yeah, we've gone through this process with a formal meeting and formal meeting minutes and a formal vote, and it's all been legally documented. So that's done.
Congratulations on that.
The formal amalgamation can't be completed until the building is there. So.
Right. What calculations are you using for the waste room size? I don't believe, does Squamish have its own requirements, or are you using the Vancouver?
They actually have proper guidelines, because when we phone Carney's and those guys, then they don't know.
So are you using the Vancouver standard for this garbage room?
Yeah, and I think Burnaby has got another one that has a very good logical layout where you can say this is the users and this is the future details.
We are working on our guide. Yeah.
And last question, is there any ventilation plan for that garbage room?
If the mechanical engineer wants it, we will put it in. Yeah, I didn't think about it.
Okay, that's all from me. Thank you.
Just two or three quick questions. What's your material for your railings? It looks like it's might be glazing.
Yes, the idea is to use wood with glass in between.
Wood posts and glazing?
Yeah.
Just a clear glazing? Just glass. Then maybe a top wood rail or something? And then a couple other questions would be, on your passive house form, this is not a comment, it's a question, it's really quite clever how you put the passive house as an envelope sitting on top of a plinth that's not passive house, which is good, right? So in this building form actually lends itself to a ton of thermal bridging, just how it is that you're calculating all that. When you get the amounts of ins and outs on this one, I think there's some trade-offs.
Absolutely. When we did torsion mounts, the previous one, it was a U shape and it had about 10 times what this one has. So trying to keeping trying to make the building interesting, having the staircases in between. This is as good as we can get, and people will learn. All of us will learn over time when new projects are going to come. You guys are going to see how difficult it is to make it not look just a big box sitting. So we work hard to get it to this point.
I guess the question would be: we would hate to. You've modeled it to work with passive house because it would change the design significantly.
We have, our PHPP is completed, all the thermal bridges are in, all the thermal modeling is done, we've done all the fixer modeling for this. Everything happens in-house with us. The only thing that we're considering at the moment is that in our mechanical rooms, we have a hot water tank, which will have to be a standard, which is a heat pump hot water tank. These are about $7,000 installed. What we're hoping to do is have a single hot water tank that's very big in the mechanical room that is connected to a heat pump that will heat the water to 19 degrees, where Legionnaires' disease is not active yet, and then take it into the units, which is at 20 degrees, but it still needs to be insulated, and then you can take it to a hot water on demand that is electrical, and then from there you can take it up to where you need it. And that will be significantly less expensive and will give us extra storage space upstairs. And so, yeah, so that's the only part that's not modeled in the PHPP.
Then the last question is just relative to livability. So on the north side, normally we would go to a tall and thin window expression rather than a smaller square. I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to probably, what was the decision, what was your rationale in and around just going with the square windows?
We're trying to make the windows as big as we can. The problem that we have is that our overheating in Squamish is a big deal. To give you guys an idea, we have 1% overheating. Now, percentage of overheating is determined by the number of hours in a year. So 1% works out to be about 11 days of 8 hours a day of having more than 25 degrees. Now, we have two cooling strategies in this. One is to open up the windows, top and bottom, and that creates a draft. Then we can put into the software, open this window, open this door, and you can tilt and turn them and all those things, and this is how much opening you get. And we get to 1% overheating. The other cooling strategy is to have a bypass in your ERV, which is like an HRV, which is slightly different, at night. So it brings in cool air and does take it through the core. If we shut off those two things, you're going to go to 25% overheating. That means that the whole summer, this building will be above 25 degrees. It's crazy. So that's why we limit the amount of windows, because we have to try and find that balance between how much heat we let in, that we don't have to provide electricity for, and how much we can work on this overheating strategy to bring it to something that it's not an issue whatsoever. Because we understand that overheating is, based on what the courses that we're doing, overheating is going to double by 2050. So what we see now is our worst case scenario of 25% overheating is going to go to 50% overheating by 2050, which is just mind-blowing crazy. So, yeah.
And just a side question, just a little further on what Candice was saying. I think Candice is on something too. Is there any opportunity to get the building to move further northwards and to improve, the landscape, the greenery at the front entry and make it a little more? It's a tough thing because of what you're doing. You've already said about that. I'm just asking, is there design rationale not to do anything and keep it grayscape? Could it not benefit for some greenscape?
Absolutely. So one of the things that we considered was basically to have these wood elements here. And we tried to, adding something to the ground is a great idea, because people will, when they drive in, people have a tendency to look a little bit more down than up. And they will see that. Because the turning around thing is such a big deal that we can't really bring landscaping into this area. And so putting something against the wall there or putting something into the ground is a great solution for softening this, or just saying this is not just a raceway. We expect that the moment people drive into a scenario like this, we have buildings on both sides, there will be a little bit of a going slow calming effect to it. But having something on the ground is definitely a reasonable option.
Thank you.
Great, thanks for the package. I think you might answer the question about windows, but I'll ask my question again because I'm not entirely sure if you answered it. I'm thinking about, so passive house is great, but it also challenges some of our maybe conventional notions around openings and articulation and massing. So I'm looking at the windows, which seem quite small. I've looked at lots of passive house projects, and the windows seem quite small, and you explained a bit about that. I heard openings, ERVs, and a bunch of stuff, but I'm thinking about the size of the actual windows, and I'm thinking about livability, access to light within the units.
Yeah.
And so it sounded like it's a performance measure that's driving it as far as circulation. But I was also wondering about the size of the windows, which would maybe solve some of that massing question that staff is asking, and then just also I'm wondering about livability, access to light in the unit.
Can I, I want to give you the guys the size of that window, because the bulkiness of that comes when you put this extra 12 inches of insulation around the building kind of makes the windows look smaller. Let me just ask a quick question here.
The small one's 2.5 foot in width by 3.
Yeah. So this is 2.5 feet right there and 3 feet high. So the window is, what is that, 30 inches by 36 inches. So they're actually...
Those small ones there.
Oh.
So those bigger ones are 3.5 in height by 3.
And that one is 3.
That's 3.5
That's 3.5 by 3 feet.
by 3.5 in height.
So the windows are actually reasonable size from a user point, from inside the room, but from the outside they kind of have a tendency to appear a little smaller. I want to zoom in here so I can show you guys the window that we've put in the living room there. That window will go up to 18 inches off the floor, and then it fills that whole space in there.
Okay, so that's the main living area.
That's the
upper
main
one's
living
bedroom
area.
Okay.
And unfortunately it doesn't show really great here, but it is something that we are very aware of, because there is part of that stigma about passive houses. So you can have small windows, and it doesn't really, it's a very important part of the process, but yeah.
It's a big window, but you still got that overhang over it.
Yeah.
Okay, that helps a bit. I'll be quick. The only other question I had, most has been answered, just about the rooftop decks. Have you considered any privacy screening between those two units, like planters, opaque glass, or something that gives some separation?
Yes, we just haven't done anything about it.
Right, okay. I think that'd be important.
We're aware that there will be something there, yeah.
Yeah, it's an important consideration. I'll note it in that comment.
Is the intention for cars to actually turn in that driveway lane to get into Advisory Road? Will cars be turning across that driveway lane, or will that be kept free at all times?
For fire access, it must be kept free.
Yeah.
So there's no parking in that one.
So you're not worried about owners parallel parking in front of their garage?
No, there will be a sign, and if they violate this, strata will have them towed. Yeah. Otherwise, the fire department is going to...
Okay. Is there a reason why you've cut away the parapet at the rear, to the north of the building, and shown railings, and left it as solid parapet at the top, on the top floor?
This one right here?
Sorry, the guardrail that's
Oh,
here.
right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have it running along as a sort of, I guess it's a,
Oh, yeah, sorry, yeah,
One
it's
or
running
two.
all the way through there. Yeah.
but on the rear you cut away and you have like a different railing side.
So on the rear...
Scroll down.
Okay.
Go on.
Yeah.
So,
Zoom in.
right here?
You've got cutaways.
I am not following you, sorry.
The railing height seems to vary. The parapet starts and then the railing
Oh.
starts.
Yeah. Oh,
It's
there,
a guard,
yeah,
it's a
yeah,
guard
yeah.
parapet or a non-guard parapet.
Yes, and it was just because if we kept it all the way the same, it made the massing look significant. This was a good way for us to actually bring down the massing look of this. And
So why haven't you used that technique on the south side?
because of the, on this, so you mean on this side right here?
Right.
Just, we felt that with this bump out that happens here, there was enough going on. So if I show you the plan there, basically this is happening on the roof. So there's a bump out there that actually reduces the massing from that side.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, no
a
worries.
moment to catch up there.
Yeah, no worries. The only departure from the Arbutus Grove material seems to be the corrugated zinc material. Are you worried about this employed only on the south side? Are you worried about sun refracting?
No.
Quick. Maybe a planning question, but is there any guarantees for certification? Because we are being asked to exclude size based on passive house requirements and increasing insulation. So if this doesn't get certification, is there any guarantees put in place by planning?
I can answer that.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Just like we did with the previous project on Aspen Road, we put a covenant that's connected to the variance on the property that requires passive house standard or no occupancy.
Cool. Okay.
Sorry, just to follow up. So is it based on the actual certification for passive house, or is it more just like hitting step code 5?
No, I think we use passive house.
Okay.
I did not know about this.
Nope, no pressure.
Oh, yeah.
Quite a
So I believe it is step code 5.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe the covenant is step code 5.
I think it mentions both in there, whichever one is more stringent.
Okay.
Better make sure that PHPP is deadly.
And last question, are the window colors the same as Arbutus Grove? The window frame color?
Yes. White.
It looks, okay. Thanks.
There's sorry, I would like to comment on that too. So, passive house certified windows is about double the cost of where we are at the moment with typical triple pane windows. If you add a color to that, then it goes up another 10 to 15%. So in us dragging everybody to the starting line, that's as far as we're going to go. Yeah.
Okay.
Most of my questions have been answered. I just a couple of small things. I'm just wondering if there's any out in that grassy area on the Buckley side. It's an open area. Is there anything? It doesn't look like it, but is there any consideration of some kind of barrier so that if someone's playing with a ball, it won't get kicked into the street, or kids won't run out into the street, or is that considered at all?
Yes, we did consider it. We actually had a bigger railing there, which doesn't meet the bylaw. I don't know if there's an option for us to put in something smaller at this stage.
One of the things to consider there is visibility, because it is such an active area for pedestrians. And I'm sure we would want to keep that as low as possible. And the other thing is there is that sidewalk and then it's a ditch before you get to the road, so it's not as easy to just run out.
So there is a ditch along there?
I believe so, yeah, between the sidewalk and the actual road.
You can see the curve in that outer, yeah, that's the ditch it is, so that is the third black.
Okay, so there is something there that would stop.
The actual asphalt is quite a distance away.
Just to clarify, it's not ditch, just a gravel boulevard
Gravel
area.
shoulder.
Yeah.
There, if we can get something like a split rail fence that is still very open, but at least stop kids from just like, oh, there's the ball, and stop running after it, then that might help.
Yeah.
Most neighborhoods have lawns and street, and kids play.
Well, yeah, landscaping can form a barrier, even stones placed along the ground, but just a question if that was considered. And the other one is aesthetic versus functionality of your passive house. It seems to me you've got a light color on the south side and a dark face on the north side. That's part of the system to do that?
It has extremely low effect on what we're doing. It does, but very, very low. It was not that was a decision based on the colors and everything else. It wasn't really an effect on the passive house numbers.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anyone else with final questions before we go to comments?
And one, since it's marrying up with Arbutus, did you ever explore just doing a conventional structure that might be more consistent with its partner neighbor?
No.
Okay.
It's too expensive to try and do that type of multiple designs. So when we said,
Building form only, the planning the same, the
Oh,
driveway
yeah.
the same, just instead of going passive, going with, obviously,
Yeah.
it's a reasonable performer in energy, but not going with a very different beast
Yeah.
than the other.
no.
Okay. Question.
Yeah.
Good, thanks.
I have one more. Just, you said you were at 13.5 kilowatt hours right now. And then I tried to follow what you were saying about the mechanical room with the hot water heating.
Yeah, yeah.
Has that been taken into account into your?
We haven't made a final decision on the water just because we're trying to find, we worked very hard to find passive robust things.
Yeah.
So not having a water tank in the unit will remove the risk of it being breaking and that insulation, especially on our lowest floor, getting wet. So removing the hot water tank will be a big benefit that way. Supply and demand hot water is for a very good unit is about $1,500 compared to the $7,000 for the Sandon unit. And so, and then obviously if the line running through the place is about 20 degrees, we don't have to insulate it excessively. So we're trying to find, and every project that we do, we're trying to find the best possible solutions because a lot of these are cost, benefit, robust breakdowns. Like on the previous project, we were able to remove the Sandons, change the insulation types that we use. In the 2x10, we actually ended up putting more Roxol into the 2x10 overframing, and we were able to get rid of the Sandons and go to a ream plastic tank that has got a lifetime warranty on it. And so we just drive this into the ground, trying to find what is the best possible solution. The previous project was close to 14,000 square feet. This is about half the size, and the size just doesn't allow us to do the same thing. So now we have to find the best possible solution for this size project.
Okay, there we go. Questions, we'll follow up with comments here. We can go fairly quickly, but we have a lot of questions because of passive house owners still learning that, so appreciate your dialogue there. Comments, I really only have one or two. One would be the end wall treatment facing Buckley. I think Barbudas Grove was very successful because they gave some play on that front or that end wall that doesn't look like an end wall. It looks almost like a front wall, and so I think there's an opportunity there. You mentioned that's not a design constraint, that maybe just animate that. Look at what Barbudas Grove did and maybe add some cladding up top, down from the roof or whatever, some interest there. Break up, especially that upper story there.
Yeah.
And then following on John's question, is that the split rail might work pretty well there. And I think there is a small fence or split rail on Barbudas as well, so it could play off well there. So those are my two comments.
Thank you.
In terms of the variance, I think for me, considering that it's a passive house in a floodplain, it seems that the minimal requests seem to be reasonable. I think with regards to the open space and breaking it up into two, that seems to be a reasonable variance as well. In terms of the drive aisle, I appreciate that there's a requirement to share that space from a functionality perspective, but I think it would be interesting to explore how that surface treatment could be adjusted just to make it feel a bit more, break up the asphalt a little bit and make it feel a part of this building, even though it is a shared space. And I think through signage that could be mitigated well. I do appreciate the potential consideration to have the wood at the bottom. I think it's a really nice material. It speaks to the Squamish vernacular. And I would encourage as much as possible, we spoke about the east facade, the west facade, as much as possible to, if it could be broken up a little bit more, that'd be great, appreciating that passive requires the geometry as does. With regards to the railing, we spoke a lot about how that affects the massing of the building, but I would give some consideration to just the experience of being on that patio with a parapet versus a railing, and how much more maybe open it would feel with more of a railing design. In terms of the open space, just a small functional note, I think bamboo should be taken off the plant list. It tends to become quite a nuisance in the long term. Looking at in terms of the trees, I think there should be a lot more on the site, and so I appreciate that there's some consideration to passive house and how the shading works and all that, but you know, in the backyards of each unit, I think there should be a tree for each, and just really bringing in that form as much as possible. In terms of the open space in general, I think it's really missing the mark. Considering how much consideration is being put into every mullion and thickness of the walls, I think that the landscape should tell a similar story of sustainability. It'd be a really great learning moment for the community at large if there was a really great sustainable story, whether it be through rain gardens or pollinators or native plants, or there's a lot of opportunities there, but really getting that landscape telling this really great story. And how wonderful if there was a huge rainstorm in Squamish and everyone could come here and see how that landscape is functioning and how the rainwater from the roof is drizzling down into the landscape and animating that space. So I'd really encourage the team to take a look at that and see what's achievable in the open space for that. Thank you for your presentation.
So I don't mind the concrete on the garage. I think, you know, I don't think we need to clad a CLT. That's, you know. I think if you move forward with the concrete, maybe if you could put something on those edges where the signage would be, just to sort of help with the wayfinding. I don't know if that's, like, Arbutus is red doors right now, right? I don't know, maybe it's a red panel to just sort of help navigate your way through the site. Yeah, I don't mind the masking. I think it's okay. I don't like the top. It feels like those, it's very purpose driven, but it kind of, it's taking away, I think, from the massing of the lower stories, and it's kind of like this afterthought, or for lack of a better word, it's sort of like a tumor. It's, you know, if it could move and incorporate into the parapet or something, it's just kind of right in the middle. So I don't know if there's opportunity to maybe jig the floor plan a little bit to get that not just, you know, centered and then it's really in your face. And then I think just for the cladding and breaking up, you can't, I mean, how are you going to address Buckley? Maybe if you put some wood around those windows like the first building had done, that's, you know, that could tie it in well. Yeah, and then again, just looking at that, where the asphalt, see if you could keep asphalt to a minimum and then try to, you know.
That's a very easy thing to do, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think, I mean, there's a bit of compromise here, I think, being a passive house. Like, if this wasn't passive, then no. But, you know, I think we have to find a balance there. So maybe just add some features and, yeah, it's fine. Thanks for your presentation.
Good. Well, I was excited to see this project because I think the first initial move of combining the driveways, the previous project, I could just see that pattern repeating all the way down the street, and so I was like, yes. I mean, and those are the really first moves that, it doesn't matter what fenestration is and everything, at the end of the day, if the first move is wrong, then you're off the mark to begin with. So I think combining those two are really commendable. Maybe there's a possibility, because you've got more space in the rear yard on that setback, to push the building back even more, or if you value the rear yard more, I echo all of Jenna's comments, just to make it ×2 on all of those as far as the landscape goes. And to that I would add, I think that frontage on Buckley needs, even if it's low landscaping, something to contain it, because if that's then the common space as well as the back play space, because the common deck is above, I think it needs some safety and some definition, and that isn't your strongest elevation, so you know, as Wright would say, than just plant vines, or something to really improve that weaker part of the elevation, or work on that elevation of the mechanical room and garbage room and make them more interesting, even though that's their uses, it doesn't have to look that way. I think the building entries to the units need improvement, and that could happen really at a ground plane. As Jenna mentioned, it can happen in elevations and detailing, as Tanis had mentioned, but I think because you're going through the kind of Wembley tunnel out to the pitch or up the stairs, you need to kind of really strengthen those entries somehow. The fenestration is so small. I've done one other passive house where then we relied on screens and shading devices to cut down on that heat gain. It seems very bulky, and the windows seem so small, and then there's no windows down at the garage level. Like I could see the back of the garage somebody might be doing some work at a tool bench or something, and there's still no natural light into the garage, just a door. So I think that would help it too. And if there was a way to make a connection down to the backyard from your private or your common deck, it might strengthen the livability there, where the kids can just run up and down and you're on the deck or whatever. But I think I find the passive is overtaking kind of the livability of it, and there's maybe too much weight on that, and you know, you end up with kind of a very passive aggressive building. It's just so heavy, and it's got these very small windows and fenestrations, and I think there's a lot that you're giving up on that. And so in this case, I would support this project more to be consistent with its neighbor building and do a passive building on a site where you've got the room and space to do a landscape that is also in the same vein, a very green landscape, versus what I'm seeing is a very kind of minimalist, underwhelming landscape. That's my comments.
So, as a passive house consultant myself, this project I found very exciting to see. The 4 variances that are all called for, I guess the one isn't necessarily tied to the fact that your walls are super thick, but I guess 3, maybe 4 of them are passive house related. And if planning has sort of made you guys sign on to achieving the passive house certification in order to get your occupancy, I mean, it seems a little scary, but.
I pulled up the comments, if I may, provide a clarification. It says either step code 5 or passive house.
There you go. Okay.
So it's an option.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I could imagine trying to find a developer that would be okay with that. And then my other, and I know he's sitting here, but the other thing I was gonna say was maybe.
It says either.
Apparently, yeah. Perhaps you guys could go for like the passive house low energy certification or something if you had to, but hopefully everything's good there. I think adding some paneling on the north facade just a little bit to break up that wall might help a little bit. And I'm not sure why, but the roof structure, I kind of feel like if you cut it so that it didn't connect the accesses to upstairs, would just sort of give it some more shape or break it up a little bit. I don't know if that's something you could do, but anyways. That's all I have to say. I think it's a great project, and I'm excited to see more passive buildings.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of things that have been said thus far. I will say it's pretty impressive to see a project that provides that much outdoor space. I think compared to a lot of projects we've seen come through it, there's significant outdoor space while still meeting a higher energy requirement. So I commend you on that. I don't mind the concrete on the ground floor. I think that looks fine as a monolithic structure. And really no issue with the variances as proposed. I agree that some treatment in front of the building would be good, especially even if it just prevents people from parking in front of their units, because even with towing, people do that in a lot of developments within Squamish, and so anything that kind of strengthens that identification that that's an entryway to a home and not somewhere that you can park, but you can still drive over it with relative ease, I think would work. Carl's and I'm going to disagree with you on the garage window. I think in Squamish, people that usually have garage windows tend to board them up because they have $20,000 of mountain bikes and sleds and the rest of their gear, and if they're going to work on something, they usually pop the garage door. But that's my only comment there. I noticed in a few townhome developments that had windows, people they end up putting a wardrobe in front of it. Yeah. So, and yeah, I'm glad you found that, Jonas. I think step 5 should be the goal. Passive house is great, but I think our goal should be energy reduction, and any steps that people take to get there, I think we should reward. So, and just check about ventilation for the garbage facility. It would be a real drag to be the people behind that or beside that garbage unit, and if we had to smell hot garbage in the summer, no one's doing that. So I don't know what the strategy is, but try to work on that.
Yeah, I think it's a very good project. It's going in the right direction. I think I too would support the variances as is, and the materiality and the setbacks. But I think there should be a caveat to that a little bit, is that if you are pushing the variances, that there is some other opportunities here, and I think that then it could be that this being a good example of an infill project, it has this transition as it moves to the neighbors to the north. And so the caveat might be supporting the variances, but I think that what the project needs is the ability to actually soften its massing. And I think there are ways, very simple ways, of just softening the bulk of the proposal. And the bulk being on this one, I think there could be a better transition back to the single family, which is on the right of this diagram, by taking the overbearingness of the upper roof overhang. I don't think it needs to be continuous. I think it could be softened in some other ways. The commentary about the parapets and the railings, I think that those gentle gestures of lowering the parapets and opening it up will help with the massing. The other thing I think is it's all really related to is the corner unit. And the corner unit, it wants to be in symmetrical nature, but I think to be blunt, I think it just needs to be redesigned. I think if it was redesigned, thinking about it as a corner unit and reconsidering the fenestrations instead of a square block, that they could take on some tall and thin attributes, which do help with livability, to your point, especially on the north sides, even though it is a bedroom. I think there's some opportunities in there that would probably take away the bulk and the look of the building, which would then justify this infill back to a northern lot. The benefits, I think Jenna said it great, and Tanis as well, they said it quite well about just offering it back in the landscape and the setback. It really wants to breathe a little bit at the ground plane, and breathe being it is people's entries. It needs a little more detail and fenestration, and it has that ability, I think, and I support a variance of even shoving it further north a little bit and reducing the bulk of the building, but just to get a little more greenscape at the front door. I think that the balance of it really I think we're all sort of flirting around, like, how do we make this project fit in? And it really it's this corner element that it doesn't look like it responds to a corner or an edge or an entry, and this is the identification of the project to me. Like, this is what I would say is, this is my entry, and it can be done many different ways. And I think if somebody redesigned that end unit, I think that might help a lot. There's some questions in and around. We didn't talk about the upper landscape deck, but it looks just in the elevation, it looks like posts supporting a tent structure. I think maybe it needs to be more formal. Maybe that's the gateway announcement of the project. It wants to say this is the project, where right now it looks probably just a little too dainty, and it needs to be something more substantial about what is the project and announcing itself. I think the only sort of general last comment is really about the landscape and at the ground plane. It seems like that greenscape that's to the north of the outside is a bit of a lost leader. It really just is a landscape buffer, I think. It's not really that functional because I've got to come all the way down. I think I'm going to be up on the roof deck the whole time. I'm never really going to use that green space, especially if it's even marginally rainy and cloudy. I think I'm just going to go up to my roof deck. So I'm struggling myself a little bit. Is that you just shove the building further north and ask for a little more variance and beautify and create more of a good neighbor, a greenscape effect on the north, and give it to the south and do some really nice rich planting, although your car's got to dodge the planting as you come in. I appreciate that. But I think there's that struggle of what it is. Otherwise, I do like the application and I do like the form of housing. And I think the bulk of it really is the bulk of the building that needs to be reduced. And I think if you started with the corner, I think it would answer a lot of these other little questions. So, the only comment I'll just add, and it doesn't need an answer here, is just that one of the drawings is showing looks like exterior rainwater leaders on one of the first drawings coming down, and those can look quite awful if they're not treated well. So I would encourage that, any sort of exterior elements like these little posts and overhangs and tents and exterior rainwater leaders, and if in fact they are, they probably should be reconsidered because they can detract from the architecture quite quickly. So, that's it. Thanks.
Great, thanks for the package and the presentation. Always excited to see a townhouse application come forward. I think it's a great form and I'm happy that the market's responding to it in Squamish. I'll personally attest to your opening comments about it being a great form for families. I owned a similar unit in North Van previously to moving up here, and it was great to raise young children. So I think you've made some great moves. The site layout and combining the access is a great move as far as your circulation and reducing the number of openings on Buckley Street. And then the passive house, obviously the way of the future and where we're going. So I support the variances around the setbacks and the height to facilitate that. I think the open space is maybe a bit more of a question for me, and I agree with some of staff's comments about it being activated. But to do that, I think you probably have to respond to some of the other comments around containment and safety and screening. Not sure I understand the code limitations or the concerns of staff, so if you can work within that and give it some sort of containment so people feel comfortable using that space, and give it some sort of programming, whether that be common shared amenities like a barbecue space or community gardens, then that's going to be a successful open space. Otherwise, it just currently reads as a large landscape setback. Other comments I support around the west facade being softened, maybe with some materials, and your choice of CLT for the concrete form. I don't like the concrete form. I think it's too cold, especially at grade. If you're just imagining being in that landscape yard, it's a cold material. So if there's ways to soften that, I'd support that. And then just one last comment about the rooftops. I think they're a great idea. It's great for private space. I wouldn't agree with Dwayne. I'd say I would mostly be down in the lawn area. And I'm just thinking about my own lived experience with a rooftop deck is they get very hot, especially in the summertime, and can render them unusable, especially with small children. So you have to think about sunscreening. I'm not sure if that roof you have there gives enough. Some sunscreening, and then privacy separation between the two units. So keep that in consideration. Otherwise, great project. Thanks.
Yeah, I definitely commend the passive house for townhouse. I know how hard it is to get other stakeholders on board, so it's definitely something to be commended. I'd support the variances as well, based as they are. I support the concrete along the bottom. I think it's nice material for that sort of elevation, and it sets it off as like a plinth with the actual units above. I believe it's not been of great benefit to have the largest projection bump out done in the lightest, brightest material, and that one that has sort of 1.2 meter high parapet all the way along the top. I think if that could maybe use the same guardrail treatments that's at the rear, it would tie some of the elevations together a little bit more as well. it would also lessen the impact of that bump out. I also think that adding the zinc is probably making that elevation a little bit too busy. So, and other people have commented that, you know, if the windows were tied together with the cedar, such as, you know, that is opposite, then maybe the whole thing would start to look a little bit more like its opposite neighbor. And then, yeah, I would also maybe suggest using those stamped concrete islands at the front between to sort of announce those entrances like other people have said as well, because I really do think people will just parallel park, or visitor will parallel park in front of there, because they'll say just park there because there's no visitor parking, and it's just, there are some other developments in town where it's just asphalt as far as the eye can see, and it's hard to navigate around there as a pedestrian. You don't know if you're going to get away. Yeah, that's it.
I agree with a lot of the comments so far. So I already sort of hit a lot of the things I was thinking. I just feel that north face is very dark and could use some kind of work with coloration or variation of materials just to lighten it up and make it a little more interesting, because it will be fairly prominent towards the street coming along there, heading south. And then the other comment that I had was a functional comment in the floor plan on the second floor, on the, I think it was the second floor, but anyway, it's the bedroom level. Yeah, and so just at the top of the stairs, it looks like the laundry closet, the hallway looks very small. It's a high traffic area. Yeah, right in there.
It's, we try to make that as practical, putting all the bedrooms in there. And if you look at the amount of doors that is in there, that hallway is as small as what is physically possible. It is as efficient a layout as what one can do with what we had to put in there.
I can see the challenge and what you're trying to accomplish, but I think that it will create some problems, especially if there's a bunch of laundry all strewn about on the top of the stairs and whatnot. If there was any other way that could be approached, I would suggest it. Yeah. That's okay.
Thank you. Any last comments? There's quite a few here.
Can I need Tannis to speak up about a comment that she was nodding at, just so that it's on record as well.
Oh. Yeah, I think the continuous roof on the upper decks is helpful. Yeah, split them up, I think it gets too busy.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so there is some conflicting comments, but that's always the case. Everything's subjective. So we should make a motion. So we have a motion for, I can go through the recommendations. A, ADP supports the project and does not need...
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is it okay, we've got positives and negatives about the concrete and the CLT, or some, yeah. Are you guys okay with us negotiating this out, and we're trying to find the best solution with staff on that? Because it's...
So that's part of the motion, depending on how they want to choose. They can choose, one of the options is to negotiate that stuff with staff, otherwise another option is to come back to ADP and present another.
And we can have a discussion about that as we make a motion for A, B, C, or D.
You may proceed.
Okay, so we need a motion for A, B, C, or D, and A is ADP supports the project and does not need to see this project returned for further review. D, ADP supports the project in general and would like the applicant to work with staff to resolve the following recommendations. You can go through those recommendations and clarify some of those for you. C, ADP supports the project in general and would like the applicant to resolve the following recommendations and return to present a revised project. D, ADP does not support the project for the following reasons. So with that, do I have a motion for A, B, C, or D? Do we want to discuss before we make a motion?
Generally, you have a motion, then you have a discussion.
Yes. So I can make a motion that for B, that we support the project in general, and the applicant work with staff to resolve our recommendations. So that is a motion on the table.
Second for discussion purposes?
Second for discussion. So at that point, should we clarify our discussion before we make that? Do you want to, should I summarize those or?
You can, did
Okay.
you real, or I can?
Sure.
Just for discussion.
Aren't we discussing?
Yeah, discussion.
Yeah, so let's discuss some of the conflicting comments here.
Well, I think, we all, as applicants or panel members, have different opinions, and, it's the applicant's duty to go away and kind of find, I think, solutions that they feel that works well with the project. And, if some are conflicting, then that's not a clear direction from this panel. But I see a lot of things on this one that we've discussed that have issues that are outstanding, and we've certainly seen projects back with that number of issues. But I also see this project has some really big, good moves, so it's a tough one for me.
Yeah.
I mean, just as for discussion, again, I think it certainly has all of the right qualities of a very successful development. There are some broad strokes, I think, and I think it might be just to summarize generally, there is probably a ground and landscape connection. Are we connecting to the ground properly or not? And then, I agree with Graham's comment is that, I'd like to use the landscape, but I can't get there, right? And then a bigger second item might be it's the massing of the building. Why put the stairwell on the outside and unify with a big block on top when it could be just softened a little bit. But I think it has all of the tools as a project and a success. It just almost wants to be refined a little bit.
Yeah, and I guess do we have confidence that can be worked out with our list of recommendations? Really, if we have confidence in that process with the district and the architect and the design team, we shouldn't be holding it back, I guess. If we don't have, or we feel there's going to be problems with that resolution that's going to be detrimental to the community abroad, then we should bring it back.
Yeah, I agree with what Wayne said. I think it's set off in a good motion. Most of the big moves are made. I think we've given them a good list of things to consider that they can discuss with staff, and I'm confident that those can be worked out with staff. Yeah, we don't need to see it.
Okay. Yes.
I'm going to speak out of term, or asked to speak out of term. We received feedback from staff on the 18th of December. We had to have our feedback, our revised, mostly the questions that they asked back to you guys on the 7th of January, which basically gave us
Merry Christmas.
7 days to do this. And so I think we can address these issues with staff if we are not under Christmas crunch. And so just from you guys, from our perspective, I think we can address most of this with staff.
And it could be that staff decides that they would like design panel to review it once they get revised out.
It is easier dealing with you guys than what it is to deal with staff.
No, it's fully in your court to make that decision. There's no,
Yeah.
we'll do whatever you guys choose.
Is it a moot point in some way because is this a fast track project because it's passive, or did it not get the?
No, so our priority processes don't,
We have,
too many.
well, one is we have too many projects. The
There's a cap.
cap is 5 projects, and we have 5 projects, and that's between planning and engineering and building. And then secondly, although we haven't formally amended the policy, we've had discussions with council, and we're proceeding in the way that energy efficiency itself is not enough for a passive process. Otherwise, we're going to be jammed with energy efficiency projects, and we won't be able to work on others, such as rental or affordable housing.
Okay, so there is a motion for speed, so let's make a vote. So who's in favor for B? All in favor? And opposed? Okay. Motion is carried. In favor of B. Thanks very much.
Those of you who believe in us, thank you for the raise.
He doesn't.
Wait, can we just break for 5 minutes and we'll come back to the meeting?